translator because I'm scared.
You can give your answer in Italian if you want. But if you've got a question you'd like to ask them about their lives, their music, their anything, raise your hand.
Don't
All
be
these bashful
afraid.
people.
Pass this back to that lady back there, please.
Lady in green.
This is a personal question. Do you have any children?
Pass the microphone back up, please.
Well, we got married 6 months ago, so.
I would like to know how you two found each other.
So we met in 2008 in a piano festival in Switzerland. Then we became friends and we wrote each other for Christmas, and a few years later, actually 2 years later, we met again in a festival of a CD label in Florida, in Clearwater Beach in Florida, and something started there. And then, so the idea was, okay, in order to be together more time, since St. Louis and Milan, the flight is more than $1,000 every time, so I said, well, for next summer, because this started in January, for next summer, I want to ask to some organizers if they are interested in having a piano concert, so I can play half concert, you play half concert, and we do one song together for ends, just to do something fun at the end. And by doing this, we did a lot of concerts, and the one song became 2 songs, 4 songs, 8 songs. Actually, always multiples, like 1, 2, 4, 8. I don't know why not 5, but it happened like this. And at the end, we decided, wow, this is fun to play together and do this. Let's record an album. And so then, on the 11th of March 2014, we brought some albums here. That's to sell. No, we continued, and now it's great because we travel all around the world together or with our individual projects. Stephanie plays with her trio, I play with my trio, and then we have several different things. Of course, we like when we are together and we can share the experiences and the nice people that we meet.
Stephanie, you don't look like my stereotypical jazz player. And I wonder, how did you get in jazz? And Paolo, an Italian? How did you get into jazz?
Good question. Well, I started off playing classical piano when I was 5, and then my piano teacher gave me some ragtime pieces to learn. Since I'm from St. Louis, she thought it would be a good idea to learn it. So I participated in some ragtime competitions. And from that, I started going to the West Coast Ragtime Festival in Sacramento in 2006. And then I saw people playing something called stride piano. And I knew 1 or 2 pieces, but I didn't even know anyone else played this music live, and I'd never heard any recordings up to that point of this music, of swing basically, and early jazz. So I get to this festival and my jaw drops, and I say, this is what I want to do forever. And, and then I go to Switzerland in 2008, and I meet Paolo and some other fantastic stride pianists, Rossano Sportiello, Louis Mazetier, and some others, and it was just the 6 of us, and I was seeing it done at such a high level, and that was really what sold me. And so from that I got into playing jazz, so that's it, Paolo.
My dad is an amateur jazz musician, and he plays the double bass, the banjo, the harmonica. His dream was to become a musician, but when he was young, I mean, it was not easy, especially for an Italian, to live by being a jazz musician, so he did something else in his life, and he always played with amateur bands. And I was exposed to this music since when I was born, with the record collection of my dad. Every day I was listening to Louis Armstrong and King Oliver, Fats Waller, and all this kind of music. So for me, this was the normal music at home. Then I attended normal classical piano lessons. I did the conservatorium. I kept jazz music as a secret when I did the conservatorium, and because I remember there was a colleague, a pupil, that when the teacher entered in the class, he was playing jazz, and since that day, the teacher considered him something like not a good student. So I kept this as a secret, and I started performing in an amateur band when I was 15. And I finished the conservatorium when I was 20. So I had a few years that I was performing, of course, in very small venues and bars or very small jazz clubs. And I was changing my name in order to not to be discovered, because sometimes, you know, in 100 pages of the newspaper, there is like one line that says, Paolo Alderighi Jazz Concert, and this for me was a tragedy, so I changed the name into Paolo Righi. I still have some little newspapers, and anyway, I started playing with friends of my dad, and then entered the professional scene, jazz scene in Italy, that is very, very small, and I had the chance, because the trumpet player of one band that I was playing with is German. I had the chance to go to Germany many times, and there I met the organizer of a jazz festival in the Netherlands, and he invited me to the Breda Jazz Festival, and I won the prize to go to Japan. And in Japan I met other people that decided to have a band with me, with an American fantastic trumpet player, Duke Heidgar. And from there, I was invited to the US to play, and that was for me a dream. And still now, every time I can perform in your country, I feel really privileged, because can you imagine, I mean, for an Italian jazz pianist to be invited to the US, when you go back home, your fee gets much higher, you get paid much more.
First I was going to ask how, Stephanie, your Italian was, but I figured I might get two different answers depending if I ask you, Stephanie, or Paolo. So I'm going to actually switch it up and ask a question of your accompanying band, Danny and the bass player. And it's really, do you always know where they're going? Because the harmony, that you just fall along so well, it's just amazing. So whoever wants to answer that.
Play random notes.
You know, it is really interesting. What goes on up here is not unlike a conversation that you may have with 1, 2, 5 friends, where you're all standing around. You're not thinking about the language anymore because you know it so well. You're going by very, very complex social rules of when to interject, how to acknowledge what the other person is saying that you understand. And you don't think twice about it. This is a different medium. We don't necessarily know where they're going to go, but we know it's going to be logical. And we also know how to blend, not necessarily mistakes, but go in a way that we didn't expect we were going. And one thing I love about jazz is I love the unknown. And that's so much of what this is about. Conversation on musical instruments.
I have an international question. If an Italian man marries a woman and takes her into his house, whose spaghetti sauce do you prefer, your mother's or
Well, you should ask which spaghetti sauce do I prefer between my mother's and mine. Because Stephanie likes to eat more, and what she cooks, actually, she cooks just vegetables. So, actually, my mother's spaghetti sauce is very good.
I'd like to hear Marty's background and how Marty got into music as well.
I started out as a piano player, got into ragtime and then early jazz, and just as I was getting out of college, I took up the string bass just for kicks and discovered that I could be a professional musician playing string bass. And then later I took up the tuba, so that's what I'm doing right now.
A couple of questions for Stephanie. Since I spent most of my adult life in St. Louis and you are from St. Louis, I was wondering, did you ever have the opportunity to hear U.B. Blake? And were you influenced at all by Trevor Tishner's ragtime?
Well, first of all, I just like to say to the second part of the question that Trevor Tishner did play a very important part in my growing up and my musical background, and am very sad about his recent passing, and it's just a great loss to the ragtime world, music world. He was actually one of the judges of the ragtime competitions that I participated in, and because of that, his daughter, Virginia, Marty's wife, heard about me and invited me to the West Coast Ragtime Festival, so that was a really important connection. And no, I did not, unfortunately, get into playing ragtime and early jazz until after U.B. Blake and all of those greats had already passed, so unfortunately, no.
No, Virginia Tishner is here tonight, and she manages the Sacramento Ragtime Festival, which is the weekend before Thanksgiving every year. And if you have not ever been to a jazz festival, I encourage you to take the short drive up the road. They've changed venues this year, but it's not a huge festival, very intimate, and lots of great piano music. I mean, I cannot say enough for it. We love it.
So, Stephanie, I noticed that you don't use any music typically, neither of you do when you're playing. And I wondered just how many hours a day do you have to practice to reach that level of proficiency and have it all memorized?
That's a good question. There were different periods where I would practice for 4 to 6 hours a day, and that was great. And then in the last few years, I've started performing a lot more, and so it's hard to get the time, and so that was practice there. And Paolo, how much do you practice?
Actually, I didn't understand what she said because she was speaking too fast. So, but the strange thing is when we were less called, less invited, we could practice a lot. And now that we have a lot of concerts, we should practice much more, and we don't have the time to do it. So we feel really frustrated sometimes because you arrive to the venue and there's no time, there's no energy, there's no time. You just come from the airport, there's nothing to see, and luckily we have a lot of concerts, so we can live well with what we do. But on the other side, sometimes it's difficult because when you get a phone call and say, would you play for me these days? Let me see, I'm free. Can I say no so I have the time to practice? No, I say yes, sure, I can play. And then the schedule gets full and you feel like, wow, when should we practice? So let's go half an hour before to the venue so we can practice half an hour. That's well, anyway, we try to practice as much as we can. This is the way we do.
One more question?
Right here.
Yes, this is to Danny. We've all known Danny for years. Many of us saw him all weekend in Monterey. I just admire his energy. He was a kidney donor 2 months ago to, as I remember, a close friend or a musical friend, and you just keep going and going. I'd like to know, Danny, how you do it and a little bit about how that donation started.
Well, actually, I think that kidney was holding me back. I feel great. This was a ragtime fan that I've known for, about 4 years. I'd see him about once a year or so at a ragtime festival here or there. And it just turned out that after 4.5 years of him being on dialysis, he's not going to get a kidney. Rare blood type, other health problems. And we just found out over lunch one time that we're both B negative. And so by that evening, I was in touch with the transplant center and did an awful lot of tests and flew up to Madison, Wisconsin. And December 11th, they yanked out my giblet and gave it to him. And he's doing great, and I'm doing great. So I'm tickled.
Question. What? Is it? What, Bob?
Do we have time for one more?
One more.
I'd like to know who does the arrangements for you. I mean, do you both do them? Do you do them together? Or does one usually take over? They're fantastic.
Thank you. So we decide songs that we like to play, and sometimes we listen to songs in the iPod, and we decide, oh, that would be nice for friends, let's try to see what happens. Or some friends suggest, why don't you play this song? And then we learn it, and actually we try. We start, we sit on the piano, we try to play the song a few times, just play the melody and play the comping, and then we start having some ideas and we try them, and try to make a rough arrangement of it with many mistakes. It doesn't matter, because I mean, when you have 4 hands, it can be that the voicing doesn't fit, what I do doesn't fit what she's doing. So since we don't write the whole music, we have to try and see what kind of rhythm, what kind of comping fits better the melody. And then we leave it there for a while. We go again on the same song a few days later, and usually we change a lot of what we did the first time. And after a few days, we write down some things that we have to remember, and we try to learn them by heart. And basically, the whole process is together. So it's fun for us to see a song that is obscure at the beginning, becoming something that we are comfortable to play in this particular setting of the 4 hands.
Well, thank you again, everybody. We'll do it again next year, I promise.